Today, we will discuss the events that took place on New Year's Eve in Western Europe. We will focus mainly on Germany, France, and the Netherlands, where the traditional celebration of the New Year was overshadowed by numerous acts of vandalism, arson, and violence against emergency services. New Year's Eve is usually a time of joy, shared celebration, and welcoming the new year with loved ones and friends. Unfortunately, in recent years, there have been increasing instances where the observance of this special day takes on a completely different form. Fiery explosions of fireworks are replaced by chaos, and instead of music, the sound of fire truck and ambulance sirens fills the air. This year's New Year's Eve in Western Europe, particularly in Germany, France, and the Netherlands, left a strong impression on the residents. Numerous acts of vandalism, arson, and brutal attacks on emergency and law enforcement officers are phenomena that raise concern and require attention. In Poland, the situation was significantly less dramatic. The security services were able to successfully manage the New Year's Eve celebrations, which passed mostly peacefully without any major incidents. Poles can be proud to live in a safe country where they don't have to worry about threats. However, despite this, it is important to remember that the situation in Western Europe may serve as a warning. The rise in social tensions, increasing aggression, and the potential escalation of violence could soon affect Poland as well. Although Poles feel safe now, they cannot ignore the risks that may emerge in the future. Let's start with Germany, where New Year's Eve night was full of dramatic events. In Berlin, one of the most affected cities, chaos was particularly visible. The emergency number was overloaded, causing callers to wait for a connection, and the system informed them of extended wait times. Such a situation is unthinkable when every minute could save a life. During the night riots, 30 police officers were injured, one of whom is in critical condition. The police arrested 400 people, but the scale of the events raises questions about the effectiveness of preventive actions. Many building facades were destroyed, and 36 apartments are currently uninhabitable. Around 670 investigations were initiated throughout the city, mainly related to violations of the firearms law, explosives law, assaults on officers, resisting law enforcement, arson, and bodily harm. Dangerous fireworks displays caused severe injuries. 8 people were injured by rockets shot into crowds, including 2 individuals with life-threatening injuries. Among the most severely injured was a small child, which only underscores the dramatic nature of the situation. The fire department had its hands full, intervening 1,892 times, which marks an increase of 294 interventions compared to last year. Meanwhile, the police carried out 268 interventions on New Year's Eve, which is a slight decrease compared to the previous year, when 224 interventions were recorded. Many of these interventions were further complicated by aggression from the rioters. Firefighters and paramedics were pelted with firecrackers and stones, which shows that the problem goes far beyond simple misunderstandings or games. Such attacks on emergency services are not only unacceptable, but also pose a serious threat to public safety. Particularly concerning is the fact that many of these incidents appear to have been organized. Authorities suggest that they may be linked to the activities of organized criminal groups who exploit such events to escalate violence. These actions require not only an immediate response, but also long-term preventive measures and systematic monitoring to prevent similar situations in the future. Let's now move to France, where New Year's Eve unfortunately became an excuse for the annual car burnings. This year, there were 984 cases of vehicle fires, marking a 32% increase compared to the previous year. The Ministry of the Interior emphasizes that the number of arson incidents has drastically risen, which raises serious concerns. In response to these events, the French police made 420 arrests, with 320 people taken into custody. This number also increased by 10% compared to 2023. However, not all statistics are as alarming. While the number of arrests has risen, there was a significant decrease in attacks on law enforcement. The number of attacks on police officers and gendarmes dropped by 40%, which may suggest that the authorities have implemented more effective preventive measures, which have had some positive effects. Despite this, critics argue that the government's actions are still insufficient to prevent these annual incidents. Car burnings on New Year's Eve are beginning to be seen as a sort of tradition, which raises serious concerns about the future of this situation. Similarly, New Year's Eve in Belgium and the Netherlands was marked by unrest, with numerous incidents and interventions by law enforcement. Throughout the Brussels region, 159 people were arrested during New Year's Eve, as reported by the Central Emergency Services headquarters. During the operations, 4 police officers were slightly injured. In Schaerbeek, a passenger was injured by flying glass when a bus became the target of vandalism. The police also arrested 19 people in connection with various crimes. They were caught in the act or suspected of committing offenses. Most of the arrests took place in the Brussels West area. The number of arrests was similar to 2 years ago, when 160 people were arrested, and significantly lower than during the previous New Year's Eve, when 206 people were detained. In the Netherlands, there was also a turbulent New Year's Eve, with many incidents. In various parts of the country, officers were attacked, and an unknown number of police officers were injured. In Amsterdam, police officers fired warning shots in defense against the attacks. As a result of various incidents, such as arson, property damage, and fireworks-related accidents, at least 200 people were arrested. Last year, this number was also 200, but later in the following days it rose to 747. In Rotterdam, The Hague, and Amsterdam, prevention units intervened and tear gas was used in Culemborg. The atmosphere at Dam Square in Amsterdam was also tense. As stated by Police Chief Jenny Knoll, New Year's Eve became an excuse for violence and destruction. In Wien, a police car was set on fire, and despite the ban on fireworks, illegal explosives were used in many places. In Rotterdam, a 14-year-old was killed by an explosion, and in other locations, many people were injured. The fire department received more calls than in previous years, and officers were attacked while performing their duties. The Minister of Justice called the violence unacceptable and announced that the perpetrators would be punished. Similarly to France, communication problems within the police system were reported for several hours, but they did not have serious consequences. Social problems, easy access to explosives, and organized crime combine into a complex web of causes that drive the escalation of violence during the New Year's period. The growing frustration among certain parts of society, lack of prospects, and easy availability of illegal explosives create ideal conditions for the increasing acts of violence and riots. Additionally, organized criminal groups may exploit these events to benefit from the chaos and instability. It is important to note that effectively addressing this issue requires both long-term actions aimed at improving the social situation and immediate interventions, such as regulating the sale of fireworks and taking measures to combat organized crime. New Year's Eve should be a moment associated with joy, fun, and celebration, a time spent with loved ones, full of hope for the coming year. Unfortunately, in many parts of Europe, it is increasingly turning into a period of escalating violence and chaos. In cities like Berlin, Paris, and Amsterdam, authorities must contend with rising issues related to riots, attacks on law enforcement, and destruction. In such conditions, maintaining order becomes increasingly difficult. The German, French, and Dutch authorities face a serious challenge in restoring order and ensuring safety during these special days, which should be a time of joy, not violence. What do you think about this? Where do you think the problem lies in the West? Share your opinion in the comments. I always enjoy reading them. If you like my content, please leave a subscription and a like. It really supports the channel's growth. Thank you for your time, and see you in the next episode.